Whether you call it Falcons Hate Week or Saints Hate Week, the Hate Week is here, and it's time to break it all down on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this crossover edition of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints. We are your hosts, Aaron Freeman, the illustrious host of the incredible Locked On Falcons podcast. I am Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. I don't get superlatives. I just kind of do this, pretty basic. We appreciate you very much for joining us here on the show, where we're going to break down everything you need to know about the Saints and Falcons matchup this weekend here as NFL Week 12 gets started. We'll take a look at why consistency can be the most important factor for either one of these teams. We'll break down the run game, which is important on both sides, but we're going to kick everything off with the biggest stories for the falling Falcons and the potentially surging Saints as we get into this matchup. We appreciate you very much, as always, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. All thanks to you. Thanks for helping us get here as we bring you your team every day. Today's crossover Thursday edition is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. You can download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. All right, that's my spiel to get us started. Aaron has prepared about 7.5 minutes. I upped you 30 seconds. Aaron has prepared at least 7 minutes of a rant about what's going on with the Atlanta Falcons, which is clearly the big story. So, Aaron, all yours. I'll see you.
So I appreciate all of you Locked On Saints and Locked On Falcons listeners that are here to hear my epic rant. No, I think basically the issue with the Atlanta Falcons is, as Ross said at the top, they are falling at this point in time, and they're kind of in the similar or approaching a similar spot that the Saints were in heading into this past off season, where it's like, 100%. Yeah, we're potentially going to hire a new coach in Kellen Moore. We don't have an answer at quarterback. We're going to take a answer in Tyler Shough, but we're probably prepping for maybe a high pick in 2027 or in the Saints case in 2026. Mm-hmm. And that is going to be our long-term answer at that position as we have, a reset. And that's kind of where the Falcons are with the injury to Michael Penix and the questions about his future in Atlanta. And so it's going to be Kirk Cousins again this week. There's not going to be Drake London. We saw a version of this Falcons offense back in week 8 with Kirk Cousins, no Drake London, and the Falcons got absolutely decimated by the Miami Dolphins 34-10. Mm-hmm. And basically the question for this week, not necessarily for the next, several years for the Atlanta Falcons, the biggest story is sort of what happens for their future. But for this week is how much fight is left in this dog, right? Mm-hmm. Or how much dog is left in this fight, which is probably not something I should talk about with the Atlanta Falcons and quarterbacks. But hey,
hey, yo, chill.
Yeah. But but that's one of those things where, like, is this team just basically going to give up on the season at this point in time, or is there anything left in this season? Are they going to go out there and put forth a good effort? And we'll find out on Sunday, but based off of what we have seen so far from this Falcons team in these circumstances, it's not looking great.
Dang, Aaron, I got to tell you, I've spent a little bit of time talking about the Atlanta Falcons here as we open up this week, of course, with the big rivalry matchup coming up. And like, I knew things were bad, but I thought maybe I was like overplaying how bad they were. I'm realizing I only scratched the surface of kind of where things are. I've listened to a few Locked On Falcons episodes. You do an incredible job over there. And I heard you talking about like the Raheem Morris, Terry Fontenot, what their future might be with the team. Do you think that this is a team that's in position right now to where like the players might not necessarily show up for the coach and for the GM and all those other things? Like, are they really at that point right now?
I think that's a real possibility.
Wow. Yeah.
This team is not very good, and they have not shown consistent effort. They don't look like a team that's consistently motivated week in and week out. They just let Bryce Young throw for almost 450 yards when, I think you probably could combine Bryce Young's 3 previous games and probably wouldn't have gotten to 450 yards passing.
He had only gone over 200 yards once before that game, like all season.
Yeah. So it's looking dire. So to me,
Yeah.
Ross, it's one of those situations where if they lay an egg this week, like they did a couple weeks ago against Miami,
Mm-hmm.
that to me is kind of going to tell it all. If they come out here and play a scrappy, hard fought football game, okay, maybe there is a little bit more fight left in this, small household animal. But
It's not even a dog anymore. Maybe a gecko,
yeah,
something like that. Wow. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, that goes to show the ebbs and flows of the NFL season, right? Like this was an Atlanta Falcons team that felt like it felt like that organization was kind of on top of the world after this past draft, walked away with guys like Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. and all that, and kind of really Xavier Watson, like investing in that defense and all. And it doesn't feel like maybe the offseason win has translated to the in-season win. And to be fair, that's oftentimes the case, that offseason champions end up maybe needing another couple of offseason championships before they start putting it all together. And I think, like, for the Saints going into this matchup, they're not an offseason champion. They haven't been an offseason champion in some times, but now they're gearing up for an offseason where they could potentially insert more of those building blocks. The 2025 draft class has been really good for them. And so the biggest story is just about whether or not they can maintain their momentum here and actually build something, right? Like, they won that game against the Giants. They lost 4 in a row. Then they won that game against the Giants. They lost 4 in a row. And then they won that game up against Carolina. They got a bye week. What's to say that they won't just come out and lose 4 in a row again, right? And so what a lot of Saints fans are looking for, and what the Saints are looking to prove in this game, is that they can string together some kind of consistent success from a week-to-week basis, with the bye week in the middle, hopefully providing them some opportunity through self-scouting to create some adjustments and things like that. But I think that's got to be the biggest story for New Orleans right now, is can they show, hey, it's not just one win at a time. It's not just a roller coaster seasons anymore. And can they string together something that's meaningful for its fan base?
Yeah, I think this is a big game for this Saints team, especially, Tyler Shough's introduction to the Falcons Saints rivalry. And we'll see
Right.
sort of if he can get some of that Taysom Hill mojo
Yeah.
and become a Falcons killer. And we'll see if the Falcons can still get up for a game in this rivalry and go out there and at least do Falcon fans a solid and beat the Saints in this much hated rivalry.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting matchup. By the way, Taysom Hill, I expect, is probably going to be a big part of this game. He led the 7-minute and 35-second drive to close out the Carolina Panthers game, but wasn't utilized a ton before that. And so it'll be interesting to see if maybe, just knowing his track record against the Atlanta Falcons, if there's something about, hey, get Taysom involved early or something like that, and then see where it all goes. But could be very interesting in terms of what his usage looks like and what that matchup is. And really, a big part of what he would contribute to is not the passing game, despite the QB next to his name. It's always the run game when it comes to Taysom Hill. And for both of these teams, the run game is going to be massively important on Sunday. That's what we're going to break down next as we take a look at each of the matchups to know going into this game between the Atlanta Falcons and New Orleans Saints. We got that coming up for you next here on this Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints, like all of our Crossover Thursdays, is brought to you by friends over at Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but over on Prize Picks, you can be right and get paid. It's kind of a double win for you over there. So don't miss out on your opportunity to get in on all the excitement around this sports season, whether you're following the NFL or the NBA or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. So if you haven't tried it yet, here's how Prize Picks works. It's very simple. You just pick more or less on 2 players or more when it comes to their stat projections over at Prize Picks. If you get those right with those entries that you can make in less than 60 seconds, you can end up walking away with some great awards, prizes, and of course, cash as well. So maybe you think about, more on Tyler Shough's passing yards, or less on Alvin Kamara's rushing yards, or more on Kirk Cousins' passing yards. You put all those together and then bang, you're off and running. So here's what you got to do. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's going to get you $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Ain't even got to win. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, everybody, continuing on with this crossover Thursday edition, Locked on Falcons and Locked on Saints. Aaron, we were talking about the run game, how important that's going to be in this matchup. Let's start off with the Falcons' first big matchup that you're going to be watching, which, of course, centers around what's happening on the ground.
Yes, it's going to be Bijan Robinson versus everybody, right? Because
Yeah,
basically,
right.
without Drake London, without Michael Penix, we'll see how much the passing game can get it together. But so far, this Falcons passing game has barely been good when Michael Penix has been on the field, and has been terrible when Kirk Cousins has been on the field, and Drake London has been everything in their passing game. So going back to that Dolphins game where you didn't have Drake London, you didn't have Michael Penix, the Falcons tried to establish the run early in that game. The Dolphins kind of dominated the line of scrimmage, and the Falcons were kind of forced to have to abandon the run, and then they really had nothing. And so really a big key matchup is going to be, can they get Bijan Robinson going, because he's going to have to basically put the cape on and carry this offense, and going up against a Saints run defense that has generally been good. There's been some games where they have struggled to stop the run, but it's going to be a question of whether or not we'll get the good version of that Saints run defense, or we'll get, that version that gave up a bunch of yards to like teams like the Bears and Rams and whatnot. Yep. I'm betting more on, based off of what I've seen from this Falcons run game, and it's sort of being on a roller coaster, particularly during this 5-game skid. They've started to get things going the last couple of weeks, but haven't been able to finish those games. But they have not been able to run the football that effectively during this 5-game skid. And so if that continues, it's going to be a huge problem for this offense.
Yeah, that ends up being a big one. I remember writing in a story earlier this week, the sentence that was something like, which Saints run defense shows up is going to be like the deciding factor or whatever in this game. I think that's a big thing. This is a team that over the course of the past 4 weeks has either held teams to under 100 rushing yards, or has allowed 222 and 171 rushing yards. And it's been an alternating weeks too, by the way, Aaron. And this upcoming game would be the on game for the opposing rushing offense, by the way. So could be good timing, but could also be one of the other words we're going to use a lot today is consistency. Could be an opportunity to show some consistency with Brandon Staley's defense having looked like it figured something out against one of the NFL's best rushing offenses just a couple of weeks ago up against the Carolina Panthers. But it's more than Bijan Robinson. It's Tyler Algier that is a guy that always stands out to me as well, because he always has success up against the Saints. So there's something about that tandem that gives New Orleans a lot of trouble. But there is, something to be said in, hey, run the football all you want. If you can't throw the football and you can't find the end zone, then the defense comes out on top in that situation. And so we'll see, though, because the Saints offense also has to put up points. And that brings me to my big matchup, looking at the Saints offense up against the Falcons defense. It's the run game as well. The Saints have not run the ball very successfully this year. They have 4 games in which, as a team, they've rushed for over 100 yards. And before this game up against Carolina, 5 consecutive games where they were under 100 yards. Now, they traded away Trevor Penning and somehow got something back for him. Applause, applause, applause to New Orleans for figuring out a way to do that one. Even though I think they should have gotten more, doesn't matter. They got something. And Dylan Radins has stepped in as the starting left guard. And he started 4 games so far this season. 3 of those games, they've been able to run for over 100 yards. And the offensive line has to operate as a unit. And so maybe there was a weak link there. And Dylan Radins has been one of the guys that's been helping him out. We'll see what happens with Taliesin Fuanga starting right tackle. He missed the last game with a high ankle injury. We'll see kind of how the rest of the practices this week shape up for him and whether or not he'll be on the field. But I would say that for the Saints on the offensive side, they've got to be able to run the ball successfully. It'll do 2 things for them. First thing is that it'll allow them to control the clock. This is a team that possessed the ball for only 16 minutes and 7 seconds just 2 games ago against Los Angeles Rams. An embarrassing display there. But then also alleviate some of the pressure from the quarterback and maybe not allow this pass rush of the Atlanta Falcons, which has been completely revitalized, second in the NFL in sacks right now at 30 plus, give them a little bit of pause in terms of not being able to just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. If they can win on first down in the run game, win on second down in the run game, it makes the third down passing game a little bit more conventional for their young quarterback.
Yeah, that's been the formula for teams to attack this Falcons defense, particularly over the last couple of weeks. They started out the season very strong, being 5th, I believe, in EPA per play allowed over the first 5 games of the season. They've been 27th in EPA per play allowed over the last 5 games. And those 5 games have coincidentally been the games that Devin Diablo, their linebacker, has not played. And he's been a big part of that defensive resurgence, because essentially he has a kind of a domino effect for this defense and allows this defense to be able to do a lot of the things that they do well. Get after the quarterback. Their pass rush has been primarily fueled by being the NFL's most blitz happy team. It's not one individual pass rusher. It's the collective group. They have, I believe, 15 guys with a sack this year.
Wow.
And so getting Diablo back helps out when you're trying to play that man coverage that is going to allow you to get after the quarterback with the blitz. It's going to allow you to have an option to cover Alvin Kamara in coverage. It's going to have an option to cover Jawan Johnson at the tight end position. And it also gives you a guy that can spy the quarterback in Tyler Shough, who has that playmaking and play extension ability. So if the Falcons can get Devin Diablo back and he's set to come off of IR and open up that practice window, and if he's ready to go, and the early indications this week are that he will be, but you can't really trust Raheem Morris with giving you proper timelines for injury returns. If he does come back this week, that will be a huge boost for this Falcons defense, and perhaps allow that defense that we saw at the beginning of the season, shutting down teams like the Buffalo Bills, show up, and that will be, really effective, hopefully, against, Tyler Shough, who I don't think is quite on the Josh Allen level, but call me crazy.
Yeah, I think we can all agree he's not on the Josh Allen level. I think that's okay. The way you just described Devin Diablo just gave me a bunch of flashbacks to Deion Jones picking off Drew Brees in the end zone, spying the quarterbacks and all those other things, middle of the field kind of stuff. And I just kind of got pummeled with all those really joyful memories, Aaron. Everything. So that's great. I mean, that's a huge name for Saints fans then to be watching on that Falcons injury report throughout the week is Devin Diablo, who is a ridiculously talented player. I liked him a lot coming out of the draft, going into the draft throughout his draft process when he was coming into the NFL. The thing that I'm going to be looking for the Saints offense is actually in that second level. Saints defense is actually in that second level as well. Without Drake London, looking for more opportunities to get big bodied pass catchers out there. The second highest run personnel grouping for Atlanta at over 30%, over 38%, I believe, has been 12 personnel. So 2 tight end sets with 50% of the offense going 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. And I just imagine that with, this is typically what we see across the NFL with a top wide receiver down, teams tend to lean into more 2 tight end sets to get those extra pass catchers out there, particularly big body guys out there. So I'm looking at guys like Demario Davis in the middle of the field, Pete Werner, potentially even rookie Danny Stutzman, who plays the 3rd series of each half every game over on defense. It's a part of their exposure plan with him, I guess, is to make sure that he gets experience so that if he's ever called into action due to a relief or something like that, or an injury, that he's seen it. I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like Lance Moore made this same point the other day on our Saints squad show. Just ride the hot hand, man. They put Danny Stutzman in for 6 snaps a couple weeks ago, and he's had 2 tackles in those 6 snaps. Just leave that guy in. But anyway, I digress. But that middle of field coverage and tight end coverage, and I'll even throw Alontae Taylor in there, who's probably going to be tasked with covering out of the slot and some potential tight end situations there, that those guys become really important to kind of limiting what could still be scrounged up from this Falcons passing game with Kirk Cousins in the backfield.
Yeah. You're going to probably see a lot of Kyle Pitts. You're going to see a lot of Darnell Mooney. That's not necessarily a good thing with the Falcons based off of this season. Mooney has basically been a non-factor. We saw him have a lot of success against the Saints last year. Hopefully that will show this week. Kyle Pitts got off to a great start this season and then has kind of reverted back to the same sort of inconsistent, dropping inexplicable passes, maybe not running the crispest routes. The last couple of weeks, it feels like, again, going back to that earlier point about, is this team still locked in and are players starting to check out given circumstances? It feels like Kyle Pitts is already, halfway out the door, ready to hit free agency this offseason. So if they can't reel those guys back in and allow those guys to compensate for the loss of Drake London, it's going to be tough sledding. And again, that offense is really going to be riding on the backs of Bijan Robinson and Tyler.
Yeah, big time matchup's going to decide this one for sure. Aaron and I next are going to break down what it is that each of these teams needs to do to get a win. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of the NBA, which is back. So if you want to get in on all the action, where else would be the best place to go than the actual official sports betting partners of that very league with our friends over at FanDuel? And hey, look, even if you miss tip-off, not a big deal. They have live betting, which is one of my favorite things to do over on FanDuel. You can bet on everything from who scores next to fourth quarter comebacks. You can even put all those live bets together in one same game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. Just keeps the game feeling very exciting. And of course, there's also NFL and more over with FanDuel too. This game, the Saints are 1.5-point favorites right now as the time that we're recording this, going into this matchup. One of the few games that they've been favored in before. Maybe you're a Falcons fan that feels like the Falcons can come up with the quote unquote upset in that situation. Opportunity for you there, or maybe Saints fans getting in for their team. Right now, FanDuel, in either case, is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bets. Maybe a good one to throw your first $5 down on here. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partners of the NBA. Let's get it, everybody. We're wrapping up this crossover edition, Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints. So, Aaron, finish the sentence for me. The Atlanta Falcons win if
they can start fast. This team is a front runners. That's basically what they've been all season long. And unfortunately, in typical Falcons fashion, they started fast last week and didn't come up in the end. It's almost as if like this is a team that's known for blowing leads or something like that.
I would have never thought about that. I don't know why you would say that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's same old Falcons. But, basically their only chance is really to kind of start fast and just kind of hold on for dear life and hope that, they can get an early lead that will allow the Saints to be a little bit more one-dimensional and, force Tyler Shough to have to be in a more standard drop back and hopefully they can sort of key up that blitz. And if they can get the run game going early, which they were unable to do again in that Dolphins game in week 8, that I think is going to help allow them to not have to rely on unreliable playmakers and pass catchers that have been the case this season in the passing game with Drake London. With Drake London out and Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney having to take over, and really not a whole lot else in the passing game other than throwing the ball to Bijan Robinson. If they can get off to a fast start and just kind of that will allow them to play the style of football that they want to play on both sides of the ball, which is just basically we're just going to run for 200 yards with Bijan and Algier, and we're just going to heat up Tyler Shough with blitzes, and that's how they win this game.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And listen, the Saints' fast starts have not been a part of their formula. It's been a part of their winning formula, but it's not been a part of their consistent formula. Right now, their first quarter point margin, Aaron, is minus 63 points in the first quarter. Minus 63. It will not shock you to learn, and this is true, that is worst in the NFL.
Oh.
by a margin. Like I think second place is like 49, like minus 49. And so Saints not a fast start team. So absolutely right. If that is something that the Falcons can get done, the Saints have not shown a propensity to be able to pull themselves out of holes. They too are front runners. I think for me to finish that same sentence, the Saints win this game if Tyler Shough continues to thrive and shows consistency, and the Saints defense continues to thrive and show consistency. Really, like they need to airlift everything that they did against the Carolina Panthers and just drop it into this game. And if they're able to do that from a success standpoint, obviously you got to run a different game plan against a different team, a lot more cover 3 for Atlanta's defense and all these other pieces. And so like, obviously you make adjustments for the game plan, but you have to airlift that success rate over to this game. And if the Saints can do that, if the defense can limit the run game, if the defense can put some pressure on a quarterback that's not going to move around much, if Tyler Shough can continue to deal and deliver and get guys like Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson involved, and they can run the football, if they just do the same things that they did, if they play football, Aaron, they can win this game. I realized that as I explained it, literally, I was just describing playing football. And so if they can do that, they can win this game. The issue is that they've not shown a great propensity to be able to get that done. They'll have to show that here against their most bitter rival in a game that is sure to pack some emotion as they go through it.
Yeah, I think this game is kind of setting up for a similar type of game as that Carolina game. And as you said, if the Saints can kind of repeat the success that they had that week, that's a winnable game for them. I think this is potentially going to be a low scoring affair just based off of what this offense has looked like with Kirk Cousins, without Drake London. And so a 13-10, 17-14, 14-13 type of football game feels like it's on the horizon. Now, of course, we say that, and then of course Tyler Shough is going to be dropping 5 touchdowns to Olave, and Bijan's going to rush for 7,000 yards or anything like that, and there'll be a 34-31 overtime game or something like that. But it does sort of set up for a very winnable game for the Saints if they can keep this a low scoring game. And we'll see if the Falcons can win that style of football game.
Yeah. Do you have a prediction?
I'm trying to think. I go back and forth with it. It's just like I don't feel great about the Falcons winning this game, and I feel like it's gonna be like a close, like a 14-13. The Saints edge them out in the end, just because I just have no confidence in this version of the Falcons offense.
Completely understandable. I think this is either a slog to 20 or a race to 40, one way or another. And but I'm going slog to 20. I'll take the Saints here, 17-14. Anything you wanna add in before we wrap up?
No, I'm just ready. I don't even know if I'm ready for it. Just ready to hit fast forward to the offseason for the Atlanta Falcons.
He's like, bring me a draft. Bring me a draft.
We don't have a first round pick, Ross.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Bring me to the second day of the draft. I mean, is what I should have said.
So it's more depression on the horizon. Seasonal depression is going to be winter, spring, probably summer, fall, winter.
Dang. It's dark. It's dark in Atlanta. But there's perhaps some bright days on the way for New Orleans. So we'll see if they can get that started up against the Atlanta Falcons. For Aaron Freeman, I am Ross Jackson. Make sure you go and check out Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints for the latest heading into this big time matchup. We appreciate you joining us here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.